Bill Trowbridge.
Thank you. Are you okay? Oops, it's Lee's water. Well, thank you, Richard and Jenna, for creating this paradise for artists, and we will be expelled from it back to the fallen world on Saturday, and have to face that. I've been writing another series, Candace. I have to confess, and wherever you are, and I didn't really intend to write it. I wrote one poem, and then another one came, and that's, as Candace was saying, that's kind of how series poems happen, and you never know whether it's going to be 2 or 3 or 5 or it's up to like 35 now, I think. So I'm getting a little intimidated. But they're all based on a central character named Fool, and Fool is based on the Fool archetype, which has been in existence since people first started saying poems and telling stories, and appears in one form or another in every generation and about every mode of expression, right up to modern times, where Fool is in literature, Fool is in film, Fool is in stand-up comedy, and so I'm trying to sort of draw from each of those things. And my particular Fool is, I have a poem that sort of tells of his origin that I'm not going to read tonight. Basically, for circumstances you probably need to know, he winds up in a state in which he moves, to use Jim's, something from Jim, he's got that sort of a wave pattern where he moves in this world and then winds up in the celestial world and then back down, and through the ages he's popping up and down from earthly life to heavenly life. He gets killed on earth, does a little time back up in heaven, and then gets thrown out of there because he's screwing everything up, and winds up back on earth, and on and on and on. He appears through all ages. He's like Billy Pilgrim, unstuck in time. And my heaven, I don't mean to offend anybody who's religious here. I'm a religious person myself. I think in my own way, in my private sort of way. But my version of heaven is sort of a parody of the Miltonic version, with God up there on the throne and everyone like that, and everything, all the angels around him and stuff. And I read a novel a long time ago by Stanley Elkin called The Living End, and there's a character there who goes to heaven, and somebody asked him after he's through up there, well, what's heaven look like? And he said, well, it's kind of a gigantic theme park. And so I sort of modified that. My heaven is sort of gigantic corporate woods, like Exxon or something like that, and God is a kind of a Kinley sort of figure, which sort of explains, if you have an intervening all-powerful God, why things are so screwed up on earth. And Fool helps out a little bit. So, with all that preface, my first poem is called "Playing the Fool." I use a lot of those expressions. We have a lot of expressions with fool, and don't we fool about a horse, playing the fool, fool for love, that sort of stuff. This is "Playing the Fool," and it's a sort of takeoff on that notion that the Spirit moves through us, when we are inspired to write great literature, or when we're healing. It's not me healing you, it's God's power moving, it's the Spirit moving through me, and God is playing me like an instrument. So, playing the fool. God makes fool his Stratocaster. Purple haze he commands, and blue Hawaii twangs down to earth, creating Muzak, hemorrhoids, and the Super Bowl halftime show. Toccata and fugue, he says to fool, his Wurlitzer, and something akin to a 45 of Tutti Frutti played off center descends, and with it 40 wars, smallpox, and the birth of Richard Nixon. Okay, says God, to fool his kazoo, turkey in the straw, anything, at which heavens crack apart from a high note worthy of the cast from Revelations, unleashing chaos, and with a blinding electrical pop, old night. Fine, says God. Thanks for nothing. This is an earthly fool poem. I mentioned the Charles Atlas bodybuilding course in my lecture, and I had a kind of thing for that. I never tried it because even at 10 years old, I'm looking at the ads. It looked kind of like bullshit to me, and I think it is. But it was often, it's you've all seen the cartoon. The guy that gets the sand kicked on him, the muscular bully comes by, and he's got his girl on the beach, and this muscle guy comes by, the bully, and kicks sand on him, and then he stands up to defend his girlfriend, and the guy punches him out, and the girl goes off with the guy. And then he takes the Charles Atlas course. You see him building up his body until he looks like Charles Atlas, and he comes back and punches the bully out and goes off with her. Dynamic tension is the as I mentioned, one muscle pulling against another until your body pumps up. There are two characters here that you don't have the poem in front of you. You might mistake the name, so I will call your attention. One of them is called Act, A-C-T, the character Act, and the other is Thought. Shades cocked on his forehead, fool spreads his beach towel on the sugar crystal sand, smooth out the wrinkles for his felicity, hoists a beach umbrella. This is the life, he thinks, as he eases on to the tie-dyed terry cloth. Just then, the bully Act struts by, kicking sand on them. Fool's protests earn him 2 black eyes, and Felicity strides off with the assailant. Browsing at the drugstore, Fool finds an ad for the Charles Atlas bodybuilding system on the back of a comic book. And after applying dynamic tension for only 15 minutes a day, swells into an image of the founder. Adonisized, he marches to the beach to win back his beloved, only to find she's taken up with Thought, a yachtsman whose charm is unassailable, whose marble library is all Greek to Fool. A sad ending to my Fool thing. Ship of Fool, with apologies to Catherine Ann Porter, and the person she stole the title from. There's a reference here, again, because you don't have a copy in front of you, to chance. That's like, luck, statistical chance, random chance, that sort of thing, with a capital C. And something that will have to be footnoted, I think, if this ever gets into an anthology, which will give me no end of pleasure, because all those academic footnotes, when this was a ancient Greek myth and blah 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 blah, and mine will be Mr. Bubble. I don't have it down there at the bottom of the page, along with all the classical references and everything. You all know Mr. Bubble, don't you? It's you foam up the bathtub and get your tubby toys out and get down to it. Get literary. Ship of Fool is a bathtub toy of chance who loves to play torpedo, typhoon, big silent iceberg, who sings "Swim, widow fishies, swim if you can," when the body count gets good and the cries swarm up like fizz in a Shirley Temple. Lashed to the wheel in his yellow slicker, Fool dead reckons the way, aiming a weather eye at the horizon where clouds harry as wolf pack captains, flash signals, and close in. Steady as she goes, he commands, while the last rat belly flops for Frisco. Fool thinks the odds should keep his sloop with its busty good luck figurehead from going down every time it touches water. He wonders about the smell of urine and Mr. Bubble that wafts in right after each new launching. He just wonders. Well, Milton has his version of the fall from heaven of all those angels and everything, and I have mine. I have a couple of them in fact. This is one of them. It's called The Fall, and there is an allusion here that I need to straighten out for those of you who are completely ignorant of the important things in life. A deuce coupe. Does everybody know what a deuce coupe is? It was, when I was a young lad, that was what you wanted. If you wanted to have a hot rod, and the classic hot rod was a Deuce Coupe, a 32 Ford Coupe with the top chopped off and the big engine in it and all that. If you've seen American Graffiti, the guy who was playing John there, who drove the yellow car, that was a Deuce Coupe. And the ultimate Deuce Coupe was a blown Deuce Coupe. Blown referring to a blower, which was slang for a supercharger. So, if you had the Deuce Coupe with the exposed engine, you had that big package on top of the thing, that was a supercharger. That meant you were carrying heavy horsepower. So, blown Deuce Coupe. Also a reference to motor honey, K-site motor honey. You put it in the oil, then makes your engine run smooth. The fall. What does this have to do with the fall? Wait and see. Just to stymie Lucifer and the other angels he knows are talking union, God reorganizes, makes fool his chief gopher in creating out of the void what he's deemed the blown Deuce Coupe of universes. Hold this, says God, handing him a main gear while adding a can of motor honey to the crankcase. What? Says fool, who drops the slippery thing, which rolls out the unsurpassedly burnished door, down one of the identically impeccable hillsides and falls through a cloud. Give it here, says God, holding out a third hand, his regular too, and his head still under the hood. Fool looks around the shop, spots a cracked flywheel from a heavenly tour bus, and hands it over. Feels kind of light, says God, as he shoves it into place, and gets a little flash that he's triggered something he foreordained in a tiff 2 universes ago. Answers fool, drowned out by the gnashing.